Welcome, everyone, to Buddhist Center. It's Sunday. It's pouring rain here, but it's a wonderful day because we're looking at Lama Tsongkhapa's great treatise on the stage of the path to enlightenment. We've done this for so many Sundays and did that for so many Sundays with Khenser Geshe Wandak. He was so kind to us and so generous with us with the Dharma, and he was patient and went through this text with such kind of clarity and precision. And went nice and slow. And then we'd get to the next week and you'd hear him repeat the same exact thing sometimes. And it was almost like, why is he repeating this? What does he think we forgot? And as a result of his kindness, of just kind of pounding it into our minds, many of us that I see on the camera have their mind kind of saturated with this nectar of the Dharma that makes it so you can't operate in the same way that you did before you met it. And the way that you operate now, even though it's saying, oh, we have to be less attached to this life and so forth, even though we hear these kind of statements, the way you operate now is a better participant in terms of the human race. So I think that we can all concur, those of us that studied with Rinpoche and His Holiness the Dalai Lama and other wonderful teachers. This is just my perspective, my frame of reference. And those of us that actually really tried to apply these teachings, even when we failed miserably, we got up again in the morning and applied the teachings and then failed miserably and then failed a little less miserably. And I think that those of you who are on can concur that failing less miserably occurs with consistency. And if you put the persistence in, as then the wonderful Jeffrey Hopkins said, his name is Nenden Jambel Drapa in Tibetan. His Holiness the Dalai Lama gave him this name. And the members at the library were concerned about his health. And he said, I want to pass along a message, and that is, a couple, but one of the messages is that I want them to know that my name is Nenden. The first part is Nenden, and that means persistence. If you want to look at how I got to the point of where I am, that I can, translate all these texts and understand all these things, it's just persistence. Persistence in this life, persistence over lifetimes, and then we eventually will be able to get to the point where we, can start to know beyond a shadow of a doubt, because we'll have realized these things directly. I haven't, that the Buddha was 100% correct. And along the way, if we analyze this thing, there's fixed meditation and analytical meditation. We try to begin the teaching with fixed meditation, and then we kind of go into a glancing analytical meditation. We can, through our analysis, before we directly perceive emptiness or any of the Four Noble Truths, we can, through our analysis in a concrete way, in an incontrovertible way, come to the conclusion that what the Buddha said is correct in terms of even the hidden phenomena, and then conclude based on the hidden phenomena proposed or presented, if we use then our brain, and we can then analyze things that Buddha stated about extremely hidden phenomena, and say that, okay, he presented the Four Noble Truths, presented all of these things that we can get to the point through inferential valid cognition and relying on a sign in terms of, inference through the power of fact, to come to realize these things that are so obscure to the world that, no one else in the world has ever talked about. We can realize are actually true by analyzing them ourselves. And we don't have to directly perceive all of these things to conclude that, wow, the Buddha was correct about things that nobody else is talking about. And wow, the Buddha is correct about the way that dependent origination works. And when we can conclude those things for ourselves, then we can look at some of these other kind of extremely hidden things that we really can't come to the conclusion with, sometimes without an omniscient mind. So we can then say, okay, the Buddha kind of knew what he, or in some cases, she was talking about, in this case, Buddha Shakyamuni being a male. So we arrive at these conclusions ourselves. And if you've studied for years and you participate in it, you don't just hang out and go to a place just for social reasons. You participate in it, meaning you study the things that are being taught. You take it home with you and you try to do the best that you can with the information that you've been taught in terms of application. You will start to conclude that the Buddha was correct if you put enough time in, because you will have been saturated with so much information that kind of is not in concordance with the rest of the world, that it requires you to say, if you're not going to just be a blind follower, well, why did the Buddha say that? What is the reason for this? You know, how can this affect me? How, by me participating in life in this way, will it get better? And how could it possibly get better to the point where I'd never have suffering and I'd only have bliss? And you will start to, well before you're a bodhisattva or have renunciation or have any of these kind of lofty things that folks sometimes conclude they've gotten because of a misunderstanding of the Dharma, well before you have these extremely high realizations that it would be a stretch for any of us, many of us to get to in this life, for me to get to in this life. Before those advanced realizations happen, you will be able to conclude through your own intelligence, through your own brain, logic, and reasoning that the Buddha isn't, you know, talking about stuff that doesn't make sense. The Buddha's information just conforms with reality, tallies with reality. And the more and more you see and conclude for yourself that what the Buddha stated tallies with reality, the more you can go deeper and deeper and deeper into some of the things that are more hidden, some of the things that are more subtle, and come to the conclusion of how they either just through a, you know, experience of inference at a more subtle level, or an inference through the power of belief, through relying on saying the Buddha is a reliable source. You know, there's an inference that you can say that the person's reliable. You know, when was I born? What was the date that I was born? Was the doctor who wrote it on the birth certificate, you know, and my mother and father, are they reliable sources? Probably, if they all came together and they say, okay, it's this day in June, you know, when your birthday is or whatever on this year. You know, there's so much, and now it's becoming like there's videotapes of children being born. So we kind of have to update, you know, can you prove that you were born, you know, in ways that, you know, you can only rely on, you know, these people saying it. But you kind of have to rely on the people saying, you know, that had the video camera. You have to believe that that was them with the video camera, etc. So that's what we do with the Buddha, but we don't conclude that the Buddha is someone who's reliable just because someone told us so. We conclude the Buddha is reliable by taking it as far as we possibly can with logic and reasoning in terms of what the Buddha taught about hidden phenomena. And then we say, oh my, this just completely disrupts. There's a pattern interrupt going on here in terms of everything that I've been taught, in terms of everything that I think, in terms of everything that I chase. And now what? And then that allows the mind to free up a little bit and start to go deeper into, okay, well, if that's the case, then what? And then what? And then what? And you'll be encouraged to do so because your studies will be encouraging you. Just having some external teacher or someone saying, you really should do it, you really should do it. Sooner or later, that external teacher passes from our world. We just saw that happen. So your studies, if your studies aren't there, and if your external teacher who is no longer in this world's teachings aren't in your mind resonating, you know, like, you know, going around and around and around, then it'll fade away and it won't produce the things that the Buddha promised could be produced. So that's what we're trying to do here. We're trying to get more realistic. We're trying to learn how to practice the Lamrim in our daily life and trying to see if what the Buddha said is true for ourselves. Not because Jeff said it was true, or Khensa Geshe Wanok said it's true, or Geshe Dorje Damdu, or you know, or the Dalai Lama said it's true, or Buddha said it's true. It's true because it tallies with reality. And when we look at it in terms of a valid cognition apprehending it, it's true. And when we look at the opposite, a valid cognition says it's not. And those that are believing it is are having deceptive cognitions happening. And I, since beginningless time, have had this deceptive cognition happening, this wrong consciousness, this wrong idea that the I is inherently existent. And I've made a lot of decisions about that, about everything. And not only that the I is inherently existent, but the person and all phenomena that isn't person are inherently existent. And it's been so saturated right down to the level of my, you know, appearance of what everything just looks like. It looks so solid. It looks so firm and solid in terms of the label that I refer to these things with. So before we go any further, let's do a little fixed meditation. Let's try to get our conceptuality down a little bit. I've been racing for hours now with philosophy. So I want to get my conceptuality down a little bit. So, we don't want our minds scattering if we're going to try to start from a fresh place to hear a teaching. And even if it's the same teaching, we hear it every day. We have a new mind. We have this kind of new experience, if you will, because of impermanence. Every moment there's something new occurring. So even if you've heard the exact same teaching before, if you can get your mind to the most realistic, reasonable place, the most fertile foundation for having the seeds of wisdom planted in it, you'll find that information that you've already heard before will open up into different meanings. But those different meanings won't open up if your mind is crowded, even if it's crowded with this specific teaching about the three, capacities of beings. Well, I've heard all this stuff before. So you're hearing me talk. I talked about this on Thursday. You're hearing me talk about stuff you think you know all about. So you're not listening to me. And this happens to all of us. It happens to me all the time. And then I realize I start hearing something that I don't even know. And then I don't know where to rewind. I don't know where I left off and missed. I can't figure out even what the question is because I've been in my mind so much, but I'm sitting in front of a teacher teaching me something, but I'm sure I know this information. So I'm really just half listening. And then when my mind suddenly, catches something that I don't know about, I'm not even sure how much I missed. So now what happens? What if it was what I missed was exact link that I needed to understand the object of observation of my meditation that'll get me to be able to see emptiness? What if it was that? What if it was the thing I was going to need that was going to push me into spirituality, push me out of lust for samsara? What if that was the thing that it was going to be, but my mind was crowded, with even good things, or my mind's crowded with bad things, just crowded? It's not going to be able to receive the information, and sometimes we aren't even listening at all. And sometimes we're half listening, so it's just leaking out. And then other times we're listening where we think we know already. So it's crowded. We always think of the polluted pot as something that's, it's, wrong views and all this. Could be right views, just not listening still, all mixing the teaching up. But Bunga Rinpoche said, checking my teachings to see if they're accurate is not how you study the Lam Rim. This isn't what the Lam Rim's for. The Lam Rim's to affect your mind. Are you an open vessel right now? Are you in a position to have your mind affected? That's what this teaching's about, affecting your mind. So we begin with this fixed meditation where we're telling our minds exactly what to do so we can get all of the good and whatever busyness, good, bad, indifferent. We're trying to go neutral. We're trying to get that busyness out while at the same time making our mind as clear and brilliant as possible and not sleepy. That's our goal. So we'll get into the 7-point Vairocana posture, because if our mind is clear and brilliant and not sleepy and calm, just think about how well you could listen. If you didn't have this anxiousness to go to this or that, if you could just be present, be in that moment and really receiving everything that's in that moment that's being presented. Just imagine what an open vessel like that Aryadeva says we have to be a good student, would be able to receive, would be able to analyze with that intelligence Aryadeva says that we need to have. And then would motivate us to put the effort in that Aryadeva says that we need to have. We could have that kind, calm, clear mind that could really hear this information and really allow it to be saturated with this information that could change everything. That's why we do this. So fixed meditation, we're going to get into the 7-point Vairocana posture. We've done it many times. We're going to focus on the rounds of the breath, breathing in and out and the counting. And we're going to also have the image in our mind of Buddha Shakyamuni in the front generation form, so beautiful and radiant, but fixed, making sure that Buddha Shakyamuni is not animated, about 2 inches tall, arm length away, about eye height, 1.5 inches or 2, about the size of your thumb. So now imagine Buddha Shakyamuni, beautiful and radiant, and then while you're concentrating on the breathing in and out and the counting. And this is what you're telling your mind to do. In this particular exercise, you are for once saying, hey, mind, I know you just usually run around, or you won't run around when I tell you to run around. But right now, I'm going to tell you exactly what to do, and it's going to be this. It's going to be focus only on breathing in and out, counting, and Buddha Shakyamuni. Usually you won't do what I tell you to do. I tell you to sit down, you get up. I tell you to get up, you sit down. But now when I tell you to sit down, you sit. And when I tell you to get up, you get up. And if you do anything other than what I'm saying, introspection, the spy in my mind will catch you. And mindfulness will bring me back to the object, which is breathing in and out, counting, and Buddha Shakyamuni in the front generation. So this is how we approach the meditation, to be able to really judge whether we're fighting this kind of, scattering of thought or excited thoughts, and lethargy and sleepiness, the dullness of the mind. This is what we're doing. We're saying, mind, I'm telling you what to do. Are you doing it? Introspection is going to catch you if you don't. And mindfulness is going to grab what I told you to do back, which is the focal object. It's not going to forget it, because that's what mindfulness is. And then I'll be back on breathing in and out and counting in Buddha Shakyamuni. This is what you take into your private meditation at home. In the language of the gods, nagas, and yaksas, in the language of demons and humans too, and however many kinds of speech there may be, I shall proclaim the Dharma in the language of all. Laike dan lu dan jinge rubunda dan mi ke nan dan rawa gunji dranan ji zamba dan je ke du da yi judendo. We're so fortunate to be here today. So few of us that get to touch this beautiful Dharma that Buddha Shakyamuni brought to this world. Hold these books in our hands and read about the truth that Buddha presented, the ultimate truth Buddha presented, the conventional truth Buddha presented. Buddha stating that all phenomena are not inherently existent, yet they still exist. And that this statement and the understanding of this statement would be able to get rid of the self-grasping ignorance that drives all of samsara. And we'd be able to, if we could understand this statement thoroughly, and then begin to think in terms of what this statement says, we would be able to get rid of the 8 types of suffering, 6 types of suffering, and 3 types of suffering. We're so fortunate that we have in our world, in our lives, pure teachers like His Holiness the Dalai Lama and so forth, pure Dharma from Buddha Shakyamuni passed down through the Nalanda Pandits, through these incredibly holy Tibetan lamas and so forth. We have all of these things in our life. And not only do we know how to get out of cyclic existence by getting rid of the afflictive obstructions, by getting rid of the self-grasping ignorance, we have been presented with the Mahayana, the great vehicle Dharma that shows us how not only to get rid of samsara, how to become a Buddha, how to experience bliss, infinite happiness, while also having a complete freedom from suffering, the abandonment of suffering, the absence of suffering. We're so fortunate. We can get rid of the afflictive obstructions and the cognitive obscurations, the obstructions to omniscience, and we can achieve a state of all-knowing, a state of bliss, where we have perfect wisdom, perfect love, perfect compassion, perfect skillful means, and perfect power. We have all the causes and conditions in our life to be able to arrive at that state of perfection, that state of Buddhahood, that state of having woken up. And the teachings that we're here to listen to today include everything that we will need to know in order to become a Buddha for the sake of all sentient beings. We're so fortunate This should never be lost on us. We should always remember the fact that we're such fortunate people. It's like people that win the lottery over and over and over again, but we don't see ourselves as that. And when we meditate on this human life of leisure with the 8 leisures, and we look at the opportunities, the 10, and we see how many of those opportunities we truly, truly, truly have, there's no reason not to just always have this sense of gratitude and happiness that we've met with these teachings. So when we say, we're so lucky, we're so fortunate, rejoice in this fact. It should be a joy that comes from the depths of your heart, like if you had just won a scratch ticket and it said, you're the winner for life. That feeling, you're the winner for life, is the feeling you should have every single moment because you've met with Buddha Shakyamuni's teachings. So profound. Now imagine that Buddha Shakyamuni becomes so animated and so happy and looking at you with loving eyes. You're doing exactly what Buddha Shakyamuni wants you to do. Engage in practice, engage in study, engage in listening, and listen to the teachings that Buddha Shakyamuni so compassionately came to this world to give. Buddha Shakyamuni is so happy and so proud, a teacher looking down on students actually doing what they've taught them to do, actually finding interest in what they've taught, applying what they've taught. But it would be so pleased. Imagine Khenser Geshe Wandak, so many of us are connected to, smiling and radiant, looking into your eyes. Imagine he's right there in the space in front of you. This is not a two-dimensional visualization. You're imagining the actual merit field in the space in front of you, and you're calling the merit field here. And whenever you call the Buddhas here, they arrive, because the Buddhas are omniscient, and you've now created a condition for them to arrive. But unfortunately, we don't necessarily have the karma to see it. So just begin to imagine what's actually occurring. It's not imagining something silly like a cartoon. You're imagining what's actually occurring so that eventually your imagination will become the reality of what you see in front of you, as Lama Tsongkhapa was able to see the entire merit field in the space in front of him come one by one, as he called them. We're fortunate that we're in this lineage of spiritual practitioners who've directly met with these holy beings. Khenser Geshe Wandak, who directly met with Aryatara. We're so fortunate. Now, imagine Khenser Geshe Wandak, he asked us to continue the Lamrim. You hear the Lamrim that's being presented is exactly the Lamrim that Khenser Geshe Wandak presented. Imagine how happy he would be, that laugh, that belly laugh that he would have when he would look around the room and he would laugh and smile. He was so proud to see that people were there and really interested in the Dharma. That's who you see in the space in front of you. Imagine His Holiness the Dalai Lama. You know what His Holiness is like. If you've ever locked eyes with His Holiness, imagine His Holiness is locking eyes with you with so much love and affection, looking at you with more love than you've ever seen anybody look at you with. Now imagine other holy beings like Geshe Lobsang Gompo and Khenser Gyatso Rinpoche, and imagining Demolocha Rinpoche, and imagining Geshe Dorje Damdo and Umzala Geshe Yaga and Geshe Malatensen Ladra and La, and imagining Jeffrey Hopkins, and imagining Chado Rinpoche. All of these holy beings we've been so affected by. Lama Zopa Rinpoche, who just recently left this world, but is still here pervading the expansive reality with the Dharmakaya. We're so fortunate that we've had beings and have beings in this world who can show us the nature of reality and can show us how to end all of our suffering forever, and can show us how to have bliss forever, and can show us how to become the most reliable guides in the universe forever. These are the kinds of beings that we're talking about here. This is the kind of effect that these beings have and will have on our minds. Now imagining the beings of the extensive deeds lineage passed down from Buddha Shakyamuni to Maitreya and Asanga and Basu Bandhu and Dharmakirti and Dignaga and Vimuktasena and Haribhadra and Gunaprabha and Chakraprabha and Lama Salingpa and Atisha, imagining all those holy beings there. The profound view lineage passed down from Buddha Shakyamuni to Manjushri and Nagarjuna and Buddha Palita and Aryadeva and Chandrakirti and Shanti Deva and Chandarashita and Baba Vega, Kamala Shila, imagining all these holy beings of the profound view lineage, that holy lineage of the Madhyamaka, and specifically the beings of the Madhyamaka Prasangika view, the ultimate view, the final view of the nature of reality passed down through the great master Nagarjuna to his spiritual sons. We're so fortunate that Nagarjuna came to this world to blaze the trail of the middle way consequence school for us. We're so, so fortunate. Imagine all those beings of the profound view lineage. Now the beings of the lineage of blessings passed down from Lord Vajradhara to Saraha and Matripa and Tilopa and Naropa and Losawa Marpa and Milarepa and Gampopa. So fortunate. We have the nature of the mind, those great Mahamudra teachings. So, so blessed that they're in our world. We imagine also in the profound view lineage and that we have Salimpa and Atisha, and we imagine that Atisha is passing the entire Lam Rim down to Drone Tompa. We see the old Kadampa lineages, all the holy masters of the Nyingma, Kaju, Sakya, and Galup, imagining Padmasambhava, Sakya Kunganimpa, or Sakya Pandita, and imagining the Karmapas, imagining Lama Tsongkhapa, Kirtap J, Jelsap J, Panchen Sanandrapa, Basuchiji Jetson, Jayan Sheba, imagining Janja Rilbi Dorje, Gonju Jimmy Wambo, 7th Dalai Lama, all these holy beings. We're so connected to them. We've heard all of the Lam Rim Chenmo teachings, and Rinpoche utilized these masters' texts during that entire teaching. They've blessed our ears, even if we don't know it. We're so connected to them. They're our spiritual family. Really let that resonate. These beings are our spiritual family. By thinking of their names, we will connect with them in our future lives. We will connect with their writings in our future lives. We will habituate our minds with something that in our future life, our mind will be habituated with because of the fact that we've done it now. We will have these imprints in our mind that will give rise to this connectedness to this Dharma and to these masters' works. And there's no way we can become a Buddha without all of these works and without all of this understanding, without all of this reasoning. And it's amazing. I've said so many names, and we've been blessed by all these names if we don't know it or if we do know it. Now imagine all of the deities of highest yoga tantra, yogic tantra, performance tantra, and action tantra, those 4 classes of tantra. We're so blessed to be able to be involved with, to be able to understand how to transform the 4 types of desire into path, the 4 levels of desire into path. These teachings are in our world. These teachings allow us, if we can practice pure morality, practice the foundational things that are necessary in order to realize the Vajrayana teachings, we can become a Buddha in one lifetime, just like Lord Milarepa. These teachings are here for us to study, here for us to practice, and here for us to realize. There isn't something that isn't here for us. It's all here for us. And when we meet with a qualified teacher, they can guide us through all of the stages that we need to go through. And we can meet with different types of qualified teachers who are more qualified in other areas to be able to present us with various stages. And we will seek them out because we'll know we want to become a Buddha as quickly as possible. We're so fortunate that if that's the case, we have exactly the method to make that happen in our lives. Imagine all the 35 Buddhas with their powerful basis of purification when we make prostrations to them, all of the protector deities with the small scope, medium scope, great scope, imagining Vaishravana and Kalaputra and Mahakala and Palden Lama, all of the holy protector deities who are protecting you because they've made a vow to protect those students of Buddha Shakyamuni, those students who are practicing, who are trying to evolve into completely reliable guides. These Dharma protectors are protecting the Dharma that will make that evolution possible and will protect those beings involved in the evolution. And we are those beings. So we're so connected. Even if we don't know who these beings are, I've even heard of these beings, there are beings who protect the Dharma and protect those studying the Dharma. And we're connected to them because that's what we're doing. Now imagine that we bring all sentient beings here to be our guests. We want to become Buddhas. We want to experience our most potential, first and foremost. It says, Lama Tsongkhapa says, we started from renunciation. Then we first say we want to fulfill all of our needs, and we recognize that all of our needs aren't fulfilled, let alone all sentient beings' needs, if we don't practice bodhicitta. We can get rid of the afflictive obstructions, but we can't get rid of the obstructions to omniscience, the cognitive obscurations, if we don't practice bodhicitta. And bodhicitta, when realized, is day and night, basically, in parentheses, wanting to become a Buddha for the sake of all sentient beings. wanting to bring all sentient beings, what is for the sake of, wanting to bring all sentient beings to a state of Buddhahood where there's freedom from complete suffering and there's only bliss. So I want to become a reliable guide that I have stated in my course to that reliable guide that I will bring all sentient beings to a state of maturity, and I'll be reliable, and I'll just get to work in the most efficient way possible as soon as I become a Buddha. And the only way that a Buddha can help a sentient being is to teach them the Dharma. Teach them whatever Dharma they need to hear to progress on the stages of the path they need to progress on to move closer to Buddhahood. That's all the Buddhas can do, even the Buddhas. That's all they can do. So we imagine that we have reached the best state possible of Buddhahood so that we can mature our minds to that state. The more and more we think about love, the more loving we'll be. The more and more we think about being able to help every sentient being, the more and more we'll become capable of doing it. And as you progress through the Bodhisattva stages, you become more capable of helping sentient beings. But the only way you can help sentient beings in reality at a way that will, when we say help, you could give them a cupcake if they want something sweet, but that will just be the suffering of change that you've handed them. But if you want them to never suffer again, if you want them to be free forever from, contaminated happiness and even non-blissful levels of happiness, then they're going to have to learn the Dharma, because there's nothing else that will remove the afflictive obstructions and the obstructions to omniscience. So imagine that you are acting as if you can do it. So you connect your minds to being able to. Imagine you bring all the beings and the sentient beings here. Imagine only Buddhas are in the space in front of you. All the gurus are inseparable from the Buddha. You imagine all these beings are the Buddha in front of you, and everyone you bring here is a sentient being. So you imagine you bring all hell, hungry, ghost, animal, human beings, demigods, and gods here, even those bodhisattvas on high levels who are way higher, in terms of reality. If we, go back to our unimagined world and we realize who we really are, we recognize these beings are much higher than us. We feel shy to bring them, but we're doing imagination. We shouldn't feel shy because we do this thing even in Vajrayana called pride of the deity. Imagine the audacity of imagining I'm Kalachakra or Chenrezig or Tara. So that's what we're doing right now. We're having that audacity. So we saturate our mind with such a powerful intention to become so reliable. Imagine you bring every being in the universe just stated. We're doing this to become a Buddha for the sake of all sentient beings. Saturate your mind with that. Not just to be nice, just to do it so that you can become perfectly wise, perfectly helpful. Become a Buddha, fully awakened one, awakened from the sleep of ignorance. That's why we're here today. While recognizing that this intention to become a Buddha, this thought is empty of inherent existence. The sleep of ignorance is empty of inherent existence. I'm empty of inherent existence. The merit field's empty of inherent existence. All sentient beings are empty of inherent existence, but everything just mentioned exists. And when we can come to terms with what that means, we're starting to apply the antidote to our problem since beginningless time. So that being said, imagine that you're leading all sentient beings in prayers and thought to turn them away from distracted mind and dull mind and focus only on this, focus on exactly what they need to focus on. And we're going to recite the Heart Sutra. But before we recite the Heart Sutra, I'd like to read a little bit from Jeffrey Hopkins' Meditation on Emptiness, subject matter that's directly related to the Heart Sutra. If you want to understand the Heart Sutra, if you do not understand the information in Meditation on Emptiness, there's a lot of books on emptiness, but this particular book by Jeffrey Hopkins, Meditation on Emptiness, if you do not understand the information in this book, as complicated as it is, you don't have the view, you have grasping. So it takes time, and it's a lot of technical details and information, and maybe it can sound boring, but we do a lot of things that seem boring in order to achieve miraculous results and even mundane results. So imagine the most miraculous result we could achieve, which is Buddhahood. So it's worth it to put the time in to kind of grapple with this information a little bit, to be able to know what that Heart Sutra says. So I just want to read, it's the second chapter. It's called the opposite of selflessness. So you have to, as I said, I don't know, last teaching before, concretize the self in your mind to know what the object of negation is. The object of negation is an inherently existent, concrete self. So you have to figure out what that would look like and then start to make it fall apart. So in this chapter, we start to see what the object of negation is. Tsongkhapa spends a lot of time on object of negation, does he not? So we have to figure out what's the object of negation? What's the opposite of selflessness? Selfhood. What would selfhood look like? So we start to take apart, we start to build up a selfhood with all of these terms and labels. Oh, a selfhood would be one that has kind of its own characteristics that makes it sit alone by itself. That'd be it. You know, that's how it has selfhood, you know, etc. So I'll let, you know, Venerable Jeffrey Hopkins and Kensler Licton's oral teachings and Ngawam Peldon's annotations do the talking here. And anybody who doesn't know, Jeffrey Hopkins began studying with Gen Wangel in the early 60s and then met with His Holiness the Dalai Lama in the early 70s, studied with him and translated for him for about 10 years. Has published about 63 works and edited who knows how many works. And he sat next to some of the greatest lamas of Rinpoche's teachers, okay? He sat next to Rinpoche's teachers and received teachings and, you know, made language so that Rinpoche's teachers and teachers like Rinpoche, you just name the teachers he was around, His Holiness the Dalai Lama and Ling Rinpoche and Kensler Licton and Trijung Rinpoche and, you know, Lobsang Gyatso from the Dialectics Institute and Demolocha Rinpoche and Lati Rinpoche and Gen Palden Drapa Rinpoche. I mean, the list just becomes like, wow. And you know, just in speaking with him, that he consulted all of them, all of these giants to write this book and to get the points across in this book. And that's a very, very special thing. So this shouldn't be lost. We should always remember this. We should know who blazed trails. We say Nagarjuna, the trailblazer, but we should talk about who blazed the trails right here. You know, in the United States or Canada, whoever, you know, any English speaking place, you know, and now they're being translated from English because it's easier in a lot of ways to other languages than from Tibetan. Don't forget that either. A lot of the works are now going right from English into other languages, not from Tibetan into other languages, because the English seems to be easier to get the Dharma across in. And Geshe Dorje Damdu said that in terms of, you know, studying it at first, it's a lot easier. You can go deeper and get some nuances if you could become, you know, super Tibetan language scholar, you know, and there'd be very few that could even get those nuances as scholars. But he was saying the beauty of this English language. And it could be debated. So I'm not saying don't study Tibetan language. I'm saying if you could study both, that would be the best. But we're lucky is what I'm saying. We're being spoon-fed in a way because we get to just, you know, now 20, 30 years later, 40 years later, you know, not 1,000, you know, not Nagarjuna, you know, somebody, you know, our grandparents or people's age, you know, here were doing stuff when we were doing other stuff. And now, because they were doing stuff that really, really mattered, now we can do stuff that really, really matters. So just say thank you in your thoughts and pray that all the obstacles to Gen Nenden Jambal Drapala, Jeffrey Hopkins' health and long life are removed. Okay, emptiness in all four Buddhist schools is a self-emptiness. Okay, for four Buddhist schools, Vaibhashika, Sautrantika, Chittamantra, and Madhyamaka. Okay, so Great Exposition School, Sutra School, Mind-Only School, and Middle Way School. And they all have their own divisions. We're not talking about that. Just to give you a basic framework of Buddhist tenets. Buddhist tenets are established conclusions. They're established conclusions and there's, you know, divisions of these established conclusions and subdivisions of established conclusions within the established conclusions that have nuances of established conclusion. So when we say schools or tenets, it's not like a external building. Maybe they had holders of these views had them, but basically it's a ceiling in terms of a person's capacity. Some individuals, you know, somewhere, sometime, if they weren't just writing to help others, a ceiling on their capacity to going further, unless they're prasangika. So the middle way consequence school, so there's two divisions of middle way, consequence and autonomy. The middle way consequence school is the highest among all of the schools. Okay, so all of the schools below it in some way have established a conclusion that isn't completely accurate, but they've reached a ceiling in terms of where they can get to. So they say, this is my conclusion, this is my ceiling, and they, this is my tenet. And you see why tenet was made. But even, so this is my established conclusion, and I can't go further from it. But what the tenets do is they allow a staircase. They bring you from this kind of coarsest established conclusion that kind of isn't a far leap from what worldly people think. You say, oh, okay, wait a second, there's causes and conditions. There isn't autonomy there then. It starts to, seem, things are, it's not a big leap to get to where the Buddha's first teachings are in terms of the Vaibhashika school. The Theravadan tradition mostly follows this Vaibhashika school. And I'm just trying to get everybody to understand tenets and established conclusions. So the established conclusions you find mostly in the Theravadan tradition come from the established conclusions of the Vaibhashika or Great Exposition school, for the most part. We can say that, but for the most part. So that's why we see so much focus on this, selflessness of a permanent, unitary, independent self, selflessness of a substantial, autonomous person, and so forth. And you even see some that assert a self, but that self isn't permanent, unitary, and independent, but there's a self there. So you find a lot of these assertions about just no self of person, selflessness of person, not phenomena, in the Vaibhashika school, which is the Theravadan tradition. That's why you don't hear the emptiness of all phenomena and lack of inherent existence of all phenomena very often in that tradition, because they're focusing on the selflessness of person, which is what the Buddha taught about at the first turning of the wheel of Dharma at the Four Noble Truths in Sarnath in India. So yes, in Varanasi, India. Yeah, my mind stopped for a minute. So emptiness in all four Buddhist schools is a self-emptiness. So what is self-emptiness? Emptiness of self. So the lower schools say self of person only. And then the higher schools get into emptiness of self of person and phenomena. So there's a distinction made: selflessness of person, selflessness of phenomena. Selflessness of phenomena is the emptiness of anything that isn't specifically referred to as the person. So the lower schools only assert the emptiness or the selflessness of person at varying levels, going up the ladder, Vaibhashika, Sautrantika. And then we get into the Mahayana schools, they're called the Chittamantra and Madhyamaka, and they assert selflessness of person and phenomena at various different levels. So self-emptiness isn't only referring to person, for anybody who's not aware of tenets and so forth. There's selflessness of person and selflessness of phenomena. These are two divisions of selflessness. Both person and phenomena are empty of inherent existence. And that's what the Heart Sutra is talking about. But this does not mean that objects are empty of themselves. So it doesn't mean that objects don't exist. This is the distinction that has to be made. It's not a nihilistic view of non-existence that we're positing, whether it's about the person or whether it's about all phenomena. And so many Buddhists, or I'm not sure if it's Buddhist at this point, get this idea wrong, that selflessness means there's no self. Self doesn't exist. Well, then who's talking right now? An inherently existent self doesn't exist, but self certainly exists. Certainly exists. We walk down the street. Where's the self? Right here, Jeff. Right here. When you call on Jeff, I'll raise my hand, I promise. I'll know exactly who the self is. But we feel that this self is super solid and inherently existent. There's a self here, but it doesn't exist. Its mode of existence isn't the way it appears to me. So that's the messed upness. And everything else, its mode of existence doesn't exist the way it appears to me. So selflessness of person the self doesn't exist the way it appears to me, but it exists. Selflessness of phenomena exists, but it doesn't exist the way it appears to me. It appears to the me that doesn't, inherently exist. So these are distinctions that we have to make. We have to see that it's just through mere imputation that we can say things exist, but there is this mere imputation on a basis of designation that we can say is this or that. That mere imputation itself abandons the idea of non-existence because there's something being labeled. There's a basis of designation that's serving as a basis for a label, but it doesn't have any of what I think in terms of that label: flower, chair, curry, ness from its own side. There's just a collection of parts that I nominally designate from subjective side, decide that I label it as car, curry, etc., water. And then in my mind, it's static and exists as that. But when even the dog walks in here, the dog's going to see my shoe as a choy and not put it on their foot. Subjective experience that's going on there. And that's kind of like a coarse way to look at it, but subjectivity versus objectivity. Does the object possess all of these things that give it flowerness, chairness, curryness, or is it there's a basis there that has none of that? Ness, collection of parts. Conventionally, we can say that there, is something to be named as this or that. When we look at conventions in terms of all the people around us would agree. But there's something we're all doing in our human world collectively, validly, and we're subjectively labeling things to be this or that and believing that they objectively exist from their own side that way. Okay, if objects were empty of themselves, then no object, not even emptiness, would exist. Rather, self-emptiness in Prasangika system specifically refers to an object's lack of its own inherent existence. So selflessness doesn't mean no non-existence of self. It means lack of inherent existence of self. What is self? Self a person, self a phenomena. So therefore, all phenomena lack inherent existence, yet all phenomena exist. Phenomena is synonymous with existent. Really important to get this point. Veering off into there's no self, there's no one here, just dwell in awareness, you're getting nowhere whatsoever. You're not shooting at the target and hitting it. You can do that to get to a realistic place to then maybe, find the target. But if that awareness, as we read last week, if that dwelling in awareness isn't dwelling in the lack of inherent existence of all phenomena, isn't dwelling in this non-affirming negative, this not, then it isn't getting at the root. It isn't doing what you want it to do. It's not an antidote. It could maybe suppress it, fool you, fooled, time of death, you will not be ready, because the things that you're just kind of watching and meditating on now are nothing compared to the ugliness that'll happen. Imagine if you're in a car crash right now and you don't die. Meditate. Be aware. Just be aware of the car crashing around you. Come on. Really, really, really hard. So there's got to be something else activated there that's logical. Something else that serves as a direct logical opponent to the experience of fear that's going on. A direct logical opponent. Not something that, kind of works when times are good, feels good. I get up in the morning, it feels great. Something that's going to be an antidote to that thing that's going to rise up in my mind and appear so real and scare me to death. And I'll grasp at as real, and then it'll throw me into another realm and another kind of light experience that's like an illusion. The term self-emptiness distinguishes the Buddhist emptiness from systems such as Samkhya, which assert that the person is empty of being the various other objects of the world. So they state that there is this separatable self. Various schools say Atman. You separate the body and the consciousness and you get the pure self, the Atman. That this is a non-duality in a lot of the Hindu traditions is you separate these and you have this non-duality of Atman. So the difference here is that this is this self-emptiness, the emptiness of inherent existence of all phenomena is what distinguishes Buddhist from non-Buddhist in terms of view and in this highest kind of, in terms of view. Yes, in terms of view. Which assert that the person is empty of being various other objects. Since such emptiness is other emptiness, and realization of it attained through distinguishing one thing from another, as in the case of distinguishing the person, this is the Samkhya view, from the nature that give rise to all appearances according to the Samkhya system. So we have to kind of separate out what's going on, and then the pure self will be like, hey, and then the other thing that's manipulating it all will be embarrassed, and then somehow, everything will be okay. But when you start to see if the numerators, the Samkhya view tallies with reality, if all results are inherent in their causes, are there kind of in their causes, you start to see the system fall apart and the untenability of even the assertions they make of liberation. But the only way you can do that is if you can distinguish this stuff. Such an emptiness is realization of a self-emptiness, on the other hand, involves distinguishing the absence of a false predicate of an object. Okay, so we talk about syllogisms. A syllogism is subject, predicate, reason. The subject car is empty of inherent existence because it dependently originates. So we see that the predicate or thesis is that it is empty of inherent existence. The subject is the car. And then the reason is because it dependently originates. Okay, so realization of self-emptiness, on the other hand, involves distinguishing the absence of a false predicate of an object. So a false predicate would be the subject car is inherently existent. Okay, so that's what we think. That's what we all think. We all think the subject car is inherently existent. But the subject car is not inherently existent. The false predicate is that it's inherently existent. Okay. For example, the absence of its own inherent existence and does not, okay, let me go back. You can never read anything like this without just reading it all. Realization of a self-emptiness, on the other hand, involves distinguishing the absence of a false predicate of an object. For example, the absence of its own inherent existence, and does not involve distinguishing one entity from another entity. Still, when emptiness is cognized directly, the objects that are the basis of the quality of emptiness do not appear to the mind. Based on this, some, including the Jonangpas of Tibet, Dolpopas, the mountain doctrine, misinterpreted the Buddhist emptiness as other emptiness. So we have to see if they did or not. I'm just saying that's what he's talking about. He's talking about the Jonang tradition, Dolpopa's view of other emptiness. Everything's empty other than this kind of tathagata garbha, the essence, the essential, this Buddha nature, basically. Everything's empty but that. So there's this assertion, very similar to the Samkhya view. That which is negated in the Prasangika subtle theory of selflessness is defined as inherent existence. The hypothetical synonyms of self in the Prasangika system are. Okay, so I'm not going to read that much more. I want to read all of it, but I want to talk about what are the objects of negation. So when you hear these different words, right now we're not talking about emptiness. We're talking about building up, that we're concretizing. We're saying, okay, what could a self that inherently existed possibly have? What would it be made up of? So here's 17 things that, are hypothetical synonyms of a self. And then you'll see that all of these are negated. And this is how you arrive at reality. So let me just read the synonyms. It's great to leave these imprints. True establishment, negated by the lack of inherent establishment. Okay. So you'll get the point. True existence negated by lack of true existence. And, the absence of true existence is the best. Absence of true establishment. So you can just put absence of existence as its own suchness. You can just write absence almost in front of all these. We'll see. I bet you can. Just write absence of, because the emptiness of the middle way school is always a non-affirming negative, and that's how you get at negating the object of negation. That's what a negative is negating getting at an object by negating the object of negation, arriving at whatever you're arriving at by negating something. So you're negating true establishment, true existence, ultimate existence, existence as its own suchness, existence as its own reality, natural existence, existence by way of its own character. And that's a big one. There's according to the lower school, right below the middle way consequence school, there's a 50-50 relationship going on here. It has its own characteristics, but it's not enough to make it a car. It takes me labeling it. And the two 50-50 come together, and then it all happens. The magic of car happens. But there's a little nestness. There's some defining characteristics that can be established conventionally. And the Prasangika says, no way. No way. Not even conventionally. Okay? Substantial existence. Existence able to establish itself. Existence from the object's side. Objective existence, existence through its own power, existence in the object that receives designation, existence right in the basis of designation, inherent existence, existence through its own entityness, existence in the manner of covering its basis of designation, meaning here's the basis of designation, and the carness is covering it over here. That's as subtle as it could get, or it just has carness altogether, from its own side objectively, but if it has it conventionally, Prasangika, if you say conventionally, there's a little bit of nestness there, that it takes us both to play, then you're showing some inherent existence. You're still grasping and you don't have the view. Whoa, problem. Inherent existence, existence through its own entities, existence in the manner of covering its basis of designation, existence from the side of the basis of designation. So it doesn't exist from the side of the basis of designation. The thing that you're labeling. There's a basis of designation, external, not mind-only school. Mind-only school says there's no externality. It's all mind. Everything's one entity with the mind, all this existence. But here, no. We're saying there's externality, but there's no existence from the side of the basis of designation. The members of this list are only hypothetical synonyms because in Buddhist logic, means ones with the object, unless all synonyms necessarily exist. Since these terms of self refer to non-existence, they can only be hypothetical synonyms. So it's just a technical debate thing. They're hypothetical synonyms for things to be synonymous. They have to exist. And here, all of these things don't exist. So they're hypotheticals. They're objects of negation. That's why they're objects of negation, because they don't tally with reality. But we sure think they do. The subtle self that is negated in the Prasangika view of selflessness implies an independent entity. So we're negating independence, autonomy, an independent entity, objective that can be found to have objective existence from its own side. Thus, all these terms are opposites of dependent arising. So true establishment is an opposite of dependent arising. Dependent arising through causes and conditions, collections and parts, relatives, hot and cold relatives, imputation at the Prasangika level through the power of mere imputation. Each illuminates a little more the meaning of non-dependence. For instance, existing from the side of the basis of designation means that if one searched to find the object designated, one would find it either among the basis of designation or as their composite or as the composite of their former and latter moments. Substantially existent means not existing through the force of expressions, but existing through the object's own power. Existing able to establish itself means not established through the force of terms and expressions, but existing in the object's basis of designation. The flower is in the external side. Believing that it's not mere imputation, believing it's in there. By way of the object's existing through its own power means existing through the object's own particular mode of being. The Prasangika's unique meaning of dependence is establishment through the power of a designating consciousness. Phenomena depend on thought in the sense that only if the thought that designates an object exists can the object be posited as existing conventionally. Whoa! If there's not a mind positing something to exist, it can't exist conventionally. So you ask Khensa Rinpoche, when everyone's a Buddha, is the world as we see it here? Big question. I'll leave for you to figure out. And if the thought that designates an object does not exist, the conventional existence of the object cannot be positive, but the thought does exist. Since this applies to all objects, nothing exists inherently. Right? Wow. Okay. Now let's read the Heart Sutra, which is about everything that we just read. Read the Heart Sutra with some new eyes if you've never heard anything that I just spoke about. Think about the basis of designation externally. Just feels so much like it objectively exists from its own side, just like it seems like I think it is. But then when my dog comes in, or a hungry ghost, if we want to get really fancy, comes in, they're going to look at the same thing and see and believe it to be something totally different. And there's stuff out there. So what do we make of that? What do we make of it? How could our imprints be creating everything that we're seeing, but it's still external? And us naming it brings it into being real. But it's not real in the sense of real versus unreal in terms of inherent existence. Just keep running this stuff around in your mind, but don't ever end up at this stuff doesn't exist at all. Unless it's ultimately, then I'm fine. Then we're fine. But you have to be able to conventionally posit some sort of existence. And that at the ultimate level is mere imputation. Sutra of the Heart of Transcendent Knowledge, second turning of the wheel of Dharma, where the Buddha presented the final truth of reality, the incontrovertible truth of reality, the middle way consequence view of reality. And this is the definitive teaching of the Buddha. The Sutra of the Heart of Transcendent Knowledge. Thus have I heard, once the Blessed One was dwelling in Rajagriha at Vulture Peak Mountain, together with a great gathering of the Sangha of monks and a great gathering of the Sangha of Bodhisattvas. At that time, the Blessed One entered the samadhi that expresses the Dharma called profound illumination. And at the same time, noble Avalokiteshvara, the Bodhisattva Mahasattva, while practicing the profound Prajaparamita, saw in this way. He saw the five skandhas to be empty of nature. Then through the power of the Buddha, Venerable Shariputra said to noble Avalokiteshvara, the Bodhisattva Mahasattva, how should a son or daughter of noble family train who wishes to practice the profound Prajaparamita? Addressed in this way, noble Avalokiteshvara, the Bodhisattva Mahasattva, said to Venerable Shariputra, O Shariputra, son or daughter of noble family who wishes to practice the profound Prajaparamita should see in this way. Seeing the five skandhas to be empty of nature. Form is emptiness. Emptiness also is form. Emptiness is no other than form. Form is no other than emptiness. So just real quickly, you can't get emptiness if you don't have something that's empty. Emptiness isn't some special thing out there. It's just a characteristic, the ultimate characteristic of something. So in order for you to say emptiness, what's empty? Form is emptiness. Emptiness also is form. Form is empty. Emptiness also is form, because you can't find emptiness without a basis of something that's empty. You can't find it. And it says in Lama Tsongkhapa's three principal paths that, appearances help you realize that things negate existence. Appearances, when you come to see that appearances help you negate existence, and emptiness helps you negate non-existence, then the view is complete. Wow, when you see that appearances are just dependent arisings and not inherently existent, and that you see that emptiness is just the lack of inherent existence, not non-existence, then you see that things exist. It's a little magic I just gave you. This is a little part of a text that 99.999% of the world will never understand. And we only understand it because of Rinpoche's kindness. The Mojo Rinpoche's kindness is very short commentary that just opened the door to all of it. We're so fortunate, like spoon feeding. This thing that's debated by all these great Larampa Geshes that we could just say, oh yeah, if it appears, if it's a dependent arising, it exists. All dependent arisings exist. This negates this, but all dependent arisings aren't inherently existent because of the reason of dependent arising, so they don't exist inherently. So that appearance itself, that dependent arising itself, tells you it doesn't exist inherently. And that emptiness itself, when you know what emptiness is, it means emptiness of inherent existence, not emptiness of existence. Then you can establish that it exists. And if these things aren't complete, you still haven't realized the view of the Buddha. This is incomplete. If you can't establish that karma and all these results and all this stuff works while saying they're empty, you don't know what emptiness means. If you can't establish functionality and emptiness at the same time, you can't see that one same entity, different isolates of conventional and ultimate truth. Emptiness also is form. Emptiness is no other than form. Form is no other than emptiness. In the same way, feeling, perception, formation, and consciousness are emptiness. Thus, Shariputra, all dharmas are emptiness. There are no characteristics. There is no birth and no cessation. There is no impurity and no purity. There is no decrease and no increase. Therefore, Shariputra, in emptiness, there is no form, no feeling, perception, no formation, no consciousness, no eye, no ear, no nose, no tongue, no body, no mind, no appearance, no sound, no smell, no taste, no touch, no dharmas, no eye dhatu, up to no mind dhatu, no dhatu of dharmas, no mind consciousness dhatu, no ignorance, no end of ignorance, up to no old age and death, no end of old age and death, no suffering, no origin of suffering, no cessation of suffering, no path, no wisdom, no attainment, and no non-attainment. Therefore, Shariputra, since the Bodhisattvas have no attainment, they abide by means of prajnaparamita. Since there is no obscuration of mind, there is no fear. They transcend falsity and attain complete nirvana. All the Buddhas of the three times by means of prajnaparamita fully awaken to unsurpassable, true, complete enlightenment. Therefore, the great mantra of prajnaparamita, the mantra of great insight, the unsurpassed mantra, the unequal mantra, the mantra that calms all suffering should be known as truth, since there is no deception. Prajnaparamita mantra is said in this way: Tiata om gate gate paragate parasangate bodhisoha. Tiata om gate gate paragate parasangate bodhisoha. Tiata om gate gate paragate parasangate bodhisoha. Tiata om gate gate paragate parasangati bodhisoha. Tiata om gate gate paragate parasangati bodhisoha. And here, remember, path of accumulation, path of preparation, path of seeing, path of meditation, path of no more learning. Om, representing the body, speech, and mind, pure body, speech, and mind of the Buddha, your maturing body, speech, and mind that will eventually go through the path of accumulation, preparation, seeing, meditation, and no more learning. It is said. Thus, Shariputra, the Bodhisattva Mahasattva, should train in the profound prajnaparamita. Then the Blessed One arose from that samadhi and praised noble Avalokiteshvara, the Bodhisattva Mahasattva, saying, Good, good, O son of noble family, thus it is, O son of noble family, thus it is. One should practice the profound prajnaparamita, just as you have taught, and all the Tathagatas will rejoice. When the Blessed One had said this, Venerable Shariputra, noble Avalokiteshvara, the Bodhisattva Mahasattva, that whole assembly in the world with its gods, humans, asuras, and Gandharvas, rejoiced in the praise of the words of the Blessed One. I prostrate to the gatherings of dakinis and the three chakras who abide in the holy yoga of using space. By your powers of clairvoyance and magical emanation, look after practitioners like a mother looks after her child. By the truth of the existence of the three jewels, Maya, all inner and outer hindrances to adversities be overcome. May they become non-existent. May they be pacified. May they be completely pacified. Maya, all negative forces opposed to the Dharma be completely pacified. May the host of 80,000 obstacles be pacified. May we be separated from all adverse conditions to the Dharma. May we obtain all circumstances conducive to the Dharma. May there be auspicious happiness and well-being here, right now. Mandal offering. And I think we're probably like close to out of time. I don't even know the time is right now. But I know that sometimes we do like an unconventional way of going through the teaching. But my point of giving the teachings isn't to try to follow some ritual or policy. It's to try to get you to understand what we're trying to do here, so that you can then go home, or you're at home, and do it yourself on your own, because we're never going to become a Buddha if we just do it, once a week. We're going to become a Buddha. We'll all become a Buddha, but it's going to take way too long. So this is to give you some techniques, give you some guidance, give you some ideas to bring, with you. And I'm always apprehensive to talk about emptiness in a full and complete way, to go into it. But I think that it's a lot of people are talking about emptiness incorrectly these days. And I think kind of like His Holiness brought Vajrayana out into the open. And I know there's a Bodhisattva vow about, not teaching emptiness to the untrained. But I think if we look at it systematically and we keep reinforcing that it doesn't mean non-existence, and we keep kind of going through the staircase of the established conclusions, there isn't going to be any danger. The only danger will be is if you're trying to take this in sound bites. And if you're trying to take this in sound bites, I really doubt that I'm going to send you down a lifelong wrong road. I doubt you'll be able to put together a true self or a nihilism that you never would have put together before. So I've just decided that I'm going to talk a little bit deeper about these things, just because we have to know them. And that's it. So we're probably just going to circle right to dedication, but that's okay with me. Because I do have some rituals I'd like to complete, saying I'm not going to follow any rituals. The fundamental ground is scented with incense, is strewn with flowers, adorned with Mount Meru, the four continents, the sun and the moon. I imagine this is a Buddha land and offer it. May all sentient beings enjoy this pure realm. Holy Lamas high, wrap the sky of your Dharma bodies in massive clouds of knowledge and love, and let them pour upon the earth of your disciples as we are ready, a shower of rain, the teachings deep and wide. I send forth this jeweled mandala to you, precious Guru. I'm just going to do the Tibetan. Sanjay Jodan Zoji Jodan La Janju Badu Dani Jasuchi Tagi Juje Jibe Zonanji Drola Benja Zanje Juba Jo Sanjay Jodan Zoji Jodan La Janju Badu Dani Jasuchi Tagi Juje Jibe Zonanji Drola Benja Zanje Juba Jo Sanjay Jodan Zoji Jodan La Janju Badu Dani Jasuchi Tagi Juje Jibe Zonanji Drola Benja Zanje Juba Jo. If you're attached to this life, you're not a spiritual practitioner. If you're attached to samsara, you have no renunciation. If you're attached to your own self-interest, you have no bodhicitta. If there is grasping, you do not have the view. And just remember how much better of a son, daughter, father, mother, sister, cousin, roommate you would be if you practiced the teachings for beings of small capacity and let go of the attachment for this life. It would open up so much more space for being such a better helper, because you wouldn't have so much of your own kind of self-attachment into what you find attractive and what you find as undesirous, running you around by the nose because you think this is all that there is. And as soon as you open up space, you become a better participant, not somebody who's detached or some disassociation. That's not the point of this practice. This is to be able to be really present like we've never known could be. Okay, so we read the prayer for the flourishing of Lama Tsongkhapa's teachings. I know, and a happy 4th of July for those. I know people are really like super like pumped up about it. I mean, I know we're studying the Dharma because of our independence, so I shouldn't undermine that. I shouldn't, you know, a lot of places can't study the Dharma, and we have this. So just be grateful that we have this opportunity to be able to hold a picture of His Holiness the Dalai Lama, to be able to look at Buddha Shakyamuni's teachings with such freedom and leisure, whereas so many human beings don't have that because of a particular place that they live. So let's just be so grateful for this opportunity that we have. Prayer for the flourishing of Jitsongkhapa's teachings, Losang Jitema. Though he's the father, producer of all conquerors, as a conqueror's son, he produced the thought of upholding the conqueror's Dharma in infinite worlds. Through this truth, may the conqueror Losang's teachings flourish. When in the presence of Buddha Indraketu, he made his vow, the conqueror and his offspring praised his powerful courage. Through this truth, may the conqueror Losang's teachings flourish, that the lineage of pure view and conduct might spread. This is what we're trying to do. He offered a white crystal rosary to the sage who gave him a conch and prophesied. Through this truth, may the conqueror Losang's teachings flourish. His pure view free of eternity and destruction, his pure meditation cleansed of dark fading and fog, and real quickly, I'm sorry to do this, but his pure view free of eternity and destruction, free of permanence, free of nihilism. Substantialism, permanence, free of nihilism. The middle way is existence but lack of inherent existence, subjective mere imputation. So the middle that we're talking about here, where it says his pure view free of eternity or destruction, the or is where the middle way is. That's why the middle way school, middle way view, the middle way, and the consequence school, it's just mere imputation. But we don't say things don't exist. They exist by mere imputation. We don't say that things inherently exist because of dependent origination. So very, very key point is pure view free of eternity or destruction. That's not just saying like nothing. It doesn't mean like his view won't be destroyed forever. He's going to be around. No, it means that he holds the middle way view. The middle that's free from the extremes of permanence or annihilation. Free of inherent existence, but free of non-existence. That's what it's basically saying. His pure meditation cleansed of dark fading and fog, which is what we try to do, right? When we try to acquire shamatha. His pure conduct praised according to the conqueror's orders. May the conqueror Losang's teachings flourish. Since he extensively sought out learning, reverend, rightly applying it to himself. So not only did Lama Tsongkhapa learn about this stuff, rightly applied it to himself. That's what we're trying to do here, what Tsongkhapa did. Learn some stuff and then applied it. That's how Tsongkhapa became so great. How'd Lama Tsongkhapa become so great? He learned and then applied it to himself. Good, dedicating it all for beings and doctrine. May the Conqueror Losang's teachings flourish. Through being sure that all scriptures, definitive and interpretive, were without contradiction, advice for one person's practice, he stopped all misconduct. May the Conqueror Losang's teachings flourish. Listening to explanations of the three Pitakas, realized teachings, practice of the three highest higher trainings, his skilled and accomplished life story is amazing. May the Conqueror Losang's teachings flourish. Outwardly calmed and subdued by the hearer's conduct, inwardly trusting in the two stages, he allied without clash the good paths of Sutra and Tantra. May the Conqueror Losang's teachings flourish. Combining voidness explained as the causal vehicle, with great bliss achieved by method, the effect vehicle, hard essence of 80,000 Dharma bundles. May the Conqueror Losang's teachings flourish. By the power of the ocean of oath-bound Dharma doctrine protectors, like the main guardians of the three beings' paths, the quick-acting Lord, Vaishravana, Karmayana, may the Conqueror Losang's teachings flourish. In short, by the lasting of glorious gurus' lives, by the earth being full of good, learned, reverend holders of the teaching, and by the increase of the power of its patrons, may the Conqueror Losang's teachings flourish. And then the footnote, I never read the footnote, I just looked at the words. It says, the note, literally, since he rightly applied the meaning of what he learned to his own continuum. Good, we don't have to Vajrasattva that one. Okay, I don't think I did concluding mandala offering. I think we just did one, but good. Let's abandon ordinary appearances. Let's shake it up a little bit, see if we can handle it. Our little minds grasp at things as being this or that, and I'll get done with the teaching and be like, oh man, I hope that wasn't, our little minds. The fundamental ground is scented with incense and strewn with flowers, adorned with Mount Meru, the four continents, the sun and the moon. I imagine this is a Buddha land and offer it. May all sentient beings enjoy this pure realm. I dedicate whatever virtues I have collected for the benefit of the teachings and of all sentient beings, in particular for the essential teachings of Venerable Losang Drapa, to shine forever. I send forth this jeweled mandala to you, precious Guru. Any mistakes that I've made were my own. I apologize. May they be purified by the force of this Vajrasattva mantra, imagining Vajrasattva as inseparable from your root guru, and that light ray, blue, white, red, and blue light rays and nectars are showering down on you and all sentient beings, transforming into white ohms, red ahs, blue ohms, and purifying and transforming yours and all sentient beings' minds into pure body, speech, and mind. So the pure body with a white ohm, pure speech with the red ah, and pure mind with the blue ohm. Imagine you're just being showered with this purification from Vajrasattva, inseparable from the root Lama. Om Benzo Sato Samayama Nubalaya Benzo Sato Seno Bajishta Tila Mebava Sutokaya Mebava Subakaya Mebava Anuragda Mebava Savasiti Mebracha Savakama Sucha Mekitam Shian Kuruhum Ha 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 Ho Bhagavan Savatata Kata Benza Mama Moka Benza Bava Maha Samaya Sapa Ah Om Ve. May we always be protected by Palden Lamo. Jorama 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 Jinjikala Rajama Rama Judaja Junjo Rudder Long Jong Jorama 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 Jinjikala Rajama Judaja Junjo Rudder Long Jong Jorama 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 Jinjikala Rama Judaja Junjo Rudder Long Jong Jorama 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 Jinjikala Rama Judaja Junjo Rudder Long Jong Jorama 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 Jinjikala Rama Judaja Junjo Rudder Long Jong Jorama 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 Jinjikala Rama Judaja Junjo Rudder Long Jong Jorama 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 Junjo Kala Rajama Rama Judaja Junjo Rudder Long Jong. And I encourage you all, I've said a lot of things today. Investigate it yourself, cut and rub it, see if it's accurate. See if what I'm talking about emptiness tallies with reality or not. Don't just believe in anything you hear because you've heard it, because people, mess things up, and people for their own kind of, bad motivations will tell you a lot of things. And just make sure that what I'm telling you, what others are telling you tallies with the truth. Check it out. Prayer, dedicate all this virtue. Did I dedicate? I just got lost in my head. Dedicate all this virtue to emulate the knowledge of the hero Manjushri, and likewise Samattabhadra as well. Dedication is praised as supreme by all the conquerors who traverse the three times. I also dedicate all my roots of virtue for the sake of auspicious deeds. It's funny, like gophers, my thoughts come up and they're poignant. They're good about the point, but then like all thoughts and conceptuality, they distract the mind and what you're telling it to do. Prayer for the long life of His Holiness the Dalai Lama. In that pure land surrounded by snowy mountains, you are the source of all benefit and happiness, all powerful Avalokiteshvara, Tenzin Gyatso. May you stay until samsara's end. We're so fortunate for His Holiness the Dalai Lama. And the prayer, the supplication to many of ours root teacher, Khyentse Geshe Wanda Rinpoche. I composed this short poem. I finished it 1 year after his passing on March 6, 2023. And it's called A Complex Yogi Poses as a Simple Monk. Homage to Khyentse Geshe Wandak Rinpoche, our precious spiritual friend who is inseparable from Aryatara. I fully prostrate, covering as many atoms as the earth is possible to your pure body, speech, mind, and enlightened activities. I offer to you drinking water, bathing water, flowers, incense, candles, scented water, food, and music, purified by Om, Om. The rarity of having 1 million wish-fulfilling gems is a common occurrence compared to meeting with a holy teacher like you, who placed the complete path to Buddhahood in our childlike hands. Just like Atisha, who came to Tibet with a lamp to dispel the darkness of ignorance, you, kind abbot, arrived in the West with a lineage purer than a diamond and begged us never to be satisfied with partial instructions. The teachings of the extensive deeds and profound view lineages flowed from your lips like nectar for our ears and elucidated the teachings for beings of three capacities. Now the sound is stopped. All composite things are impermanent. You told us that all your teachers passed away and understood this sadness, entreating us to continue our studies. The Buddha does not wash away the negativities of beings, nor does he remove their miseries by his hands. His spiritual realizations are not transferred to him, but it is by teaching the truth of suchness that beings are liberated. We are not prepared to take this difficult journey to the highest goodness of Buddhahood without your continued guidance. The sadness in our hearts would be too overwhelming. May you swiftly return to this world and take care of us in all of our lives, wherever we may be, never leaving our hearts and crowns. May all sentient beings perfectly realize renunciation, bodhicitta, and the correct view of emptiness, so they know who you really are. And we know that in the conventional sense, that Rinpoche's voice has stopped, but the meaning of what he came to tell us about has not stopped, and we carry that tradition on, just like Buddha Shakyamuni's meaning never stopped and came from Rinpoche to us. Thank you so much, everybody. We'll see you next time. And yeah, we'll talk about what we talk about. I really, really hope you have a great week. Have a safe, happy 4th of July. Remember, the animals get so scared, and just please try to keep, think of them first before you think of just blowing up stuff. Think about, how can I make my animal not be as scared? I understand blowing up stuff, folks are going to blow up stuff, but just think about the animals and think about how you can do it in the kindest way possible, if that's possible with fireworks. Okay? Because I know our dogs get so scared and shake when the fireworks are going on. And just remember, there's, maybe your neighbor has those dogs, right? And just think about it for a second. I'm not saying this is an anti-firework statement, but it's just, think about mindfulness isn't just about oh, and now I'm blowing off fireworks, and now I'm walking down the street. Mindfulness is not forgetting that, hey, I want to bring all sentient beings to a state of Buddhahood. I want to practice nonviolence at the lowest level of Buddhism. I practice nonviolence. Is that this? That's mindfulness. Introspection should check it out. Is that this? And if it's not, you be the judge. See ya. Okay.